we're going to get into a little bit of, who we are here at GreenSpark. We're going to focus a lot on one of our success stories, specifically with a local manufacturer, and kind of looking at that case study, going into, why go into solar, and really why now? Why not wait? Or, why is today really the right time to look at something like this? And then just really taking that next step with GreenSpark and how that process would look. And certainly then I can open it to Q&A and hopefully have some answers for you guys based on the content that we had today. So just starting with GreenSpark Solar in general, we've been around for over 20 years now. Just like it states, we've demonstrated that we are one of the most capable and experienced solar energy providers in the industry. There's been times where we've installed the most, solar in New York State, over 350 megawatts installed or scheduled currently. That's a huge number, and we're very proud of that. We like to focus certainly on our community and our surrounding community, but it's certainly that community is getting a lot bigger, and we're focused on the entirety of New York State and even beyond. We've even been looking into Pennsylvania, Vermont, Ohio, things like that. And as long as we can keep the permits and everything else going, we want to expand our business as well too. The other one I kind of want to focus on, at least on this page, is the Amicus Solar Co-op that we're a owner/member. It's something of note because this co-op is a way for us to not only exchange ideas with other companies that are like-minded like we are, but it's also something where pricing, if we can be a collective on purchasing equipment, that only helps the bottom line for our end users. So if we're able to lower prices for you, being able to be a part of these other programs, certainly it's something going to help us out a lot more moving forward. So let's get into the success story. If you've spoken with me in the past or had maybe an intro call with me, it's likely that I've brought up this particular case study. This case study is close to our hearts, not only because, and if you look at the last CEO, John Regis, sought solar to dramatically cut his critical business expenses. Not only did John do this for something on the financial side, but he did it for other reasons. He certainly wanted to do it for the environment, for environmental aspect. And while this process has gone along, now that the installation is complete, he's starting to already see those savings. John's been really great with GreenSpark to kind of tell his story. So he's always been quick to join us on some of our Tap Into Solar events that we host at some of the local breweries. He even hosted an event at his site in Macedon for others to come in and kind of take a look at what they're doing right now. And I think my favorite part of that was the 15 to 20 attendees that we had at Pourware that evening. John was able to bring them out into the facility, showcase everything that was going on out there, and really give them like a sense of a real world situation where solar was added to assist him. So he understood that, his energy consumption was going to skyrocket based on him expanding and moving into this new facility. Their dreams were big, and they're starting to get there today. Looking specifically at what we did for Pourware, the actual installation was a 441 kW rooftop array that we finished the installation back in 2024. And what the major focus with this and how GreenSpark approached this, not only did he have, and you can see from the picture, a fantastic roof that we could utilize for this larger array, but looking at what he was qualified for, he qualified for REAP, which when he combined that with all of his other standard incentives, this entire project was covered based on the tax incentives and grants that were available to him throughout this process. And what does that mean for him in the real world? That means $50,000 in electricity costs per year that he saves. And then when we look at that 25-year savings, because a lot of warranties on these panels are a 25-year warranty, so we want to look at that full length of time. 1.25 million in savings over those 25 years. That's astounding when you look at something like that. So why solar and why now? Why is today a better day to do this than maybe 5 years ago or maybe in another 5 years? I think the reason why we're focusing on businesses to look at this as a viable option is that it's not just somebody's sustainability goals. This isn't just looking at it and saying, I'm doing something nice for the community and nice for the environment. All that stuff is what we focus on entirely. Why would we be in business if we weren't? But now the financials are starting to make sense. So if you're able to make this huge push forward for the environment, and then it makes sense for your business, why not go forward with something like that? So we're starting to see a better investment for customers with stronger ROIs. You're reducing your operating costs. Energy costs at this point are continually moving up. If you turn on the news, you have everybody complaining about the cost of eggs and, standard groceries. Energy costs are going up just as much as, the standard stuff that we need on a day-to-day basis. So if there's a way to, hopefully trigger that to bring that back down to the surface, we would certainly like to go that way. And certainly there's other benefits just to sustainability and the financials of it, which we'll get into as well too. Outside of, why you should do it as a business, New York State and our government is certainly made this a priority to incentivize people, going this path. There's some hefty goals that New York State has currently, a lot of emission-free goals across all topics. And then on the federal side, your Inflation Reduction Act, which allowed us to get your 30% tax credit and equipment depreciation, that was the most significant climate legislation in U.S. history. I mean, that's the reason why Green Spark is in the position that we are in today and why solar is such a viable option for customers today, because it does make those financials make sense. And as we move forward, there's additional grants and incentives that we can always look to combine with those standard incentives to make this even more financially attractive. And if something can cover up to 100% of those costs, it's almost like why wouldn't you do it? So looking at everything, we look at standardly with any commercial customer that comes to us. You have your 30% federal tax credit, and you have your equipment depreciation. So certainly we're not experts when it comes to your tax and your tax liability. So I would always recommend having this conversation with your accountant and say, what's our appetite for this? How can we handle something like this? Bonus depreciation is something that also assists in that process. So if you can do first year bonus depreciation and get through that, it certainly would make things easier on your end. And then the focus on additional adders to those tax credits like energy communities and domestic content. Domestic content is something currently where the focus of American-made products. And if you can get these American-made products and have a collection of those to be above a certain percent, we can add in that additional 10% adder. So it's something that Green Spark is hopefully, as well as other manufacturers, are working hard to try and provide for our customers. And we're very, very close to that today. You have your NYSERDA incentive, which is going to be based on how large your system is, and that's a direct credit back to you. And then, as we kind of talked about, the USDA REAP, which covers a larger portion of a project. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that entails and how to know if you are eligible for something like that. So looking back to the case study in Porware again, One thing of note, anytime if you go through the process with GreenSpark and we provide you a proposal, the first number that you see is always going to be mind blowing. You know, we hope you don't faint when you see it, but that's just the way that the process works. That's the collection of all costs between equipment and labor and more. Then we take away all of your incentives and get you to, you know, what that bottom line number is. So in this particular case, if you were to just go through the standard incentives with this, you'd have close to a $900,000 gross cost for a system. Based on that immediate NYSERDA incentive, that's a direct pay back to you. And again, based on the size of that system, you'd receive almost 110 back. And then looking at the tax credits between your tax credit and equipment depreciation, those are pretty large numbers. So that close to 900K first price tag now is down to 300K. So those incentives take off a huge amount initially, and that's just standard incentives. We'll look at that a little bit more if we were to add in additional grants and incentives that you might be eligible for. Okay, so focus a little bit more on the USDA REAP, capped at 50% of project cost. There are minimum and maximum grant amounts. Most commercial projects that we've seen that can go as low as a 30 kW system all the way up to a megawatt. Most of those standard type projects are never going to be anywhere close to those minimum or maximum amounts. So likelihood you wouldn't have to worry about that. As well as some guaranteed load amounts that are available for you as well too. So that's just taking after that fact. So when we look at the previous cost model, let's look at a cost model again afterwards when we look at that REAP eligibility. But how do we know if you're eligible for this additional money? So originally, REAP was for just agricultural producers. You had to have certain benefits like 50% of your gross income generated from agricultural operations. They've definitely loosened up on what that is, and there's certainly ways to get around that. What our, I guess, points are for GreenSpark to look, we just want to look at your address, and is it in one of these eligible areas? You'll see that like the major cities, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Albany, pretty much most of Long Island are going to be in an ineligible area. When you start to get out past the city limits is when you'll see those eligible areas start to pop up a little bit more. We would also have to look at your NAICS code and make sure that it was eligible under this program. And that's just part of our process that, we'll certainly do with you as we go through some of the exchange of information with each other before we get to like a proposal with you. So we'll get to that just to see if you are truly eligible. And if you are, that's certainly something we're excited about because it cuts your costs tremendously. And the other thing of note, you also don't have to do anything on your end if you are eligible for REAP. So we have grant writers for this, 2 different grant writers specifically. And as it stands today, we've never had a grant writer not gain this eligibility for a customer when submitted. So the likelihood that you're going to be denied this if we think you're eligible is probably not going to happen. So that's always a good start. Now, let's look back at that model, that cost model that we had before, and let's add in the REAP grant. So we look at what we had before, and it got us to 300K, just about 300K as our bottom line previously. Now we add in an additional 25% for the REAP grant as it's that, just up until the eligibility mark of March 31st to get any REAP projects in by that date. It was sitting at 25%. So based on that would have been an additional 224K, which brings that bottom line number to 80,000. So just based on where your company is located. So let's say like Pourware, you were in Macedon. So that's outside of that city limits. We realized it was eligible for REAP. We added it into that proposal. So you went from 300K possible bottom line to now 80K bottom line. That's a huge number right there. And certainly, I think we could all agree that would make it a little bit more financially relevant, adding an additional 225,000 off of that number. And that's a direct pay back to you once the project is completed. Energy communities is very similar to REAP from a standpoint of qualification. There are energy community areas that, based on your address, if we put it into that eligibility website, basically it'll just let you know, are you or are you not in an energy community? If you are, 10% adder to that 30% investment tax credit is what you would qualify for. So it's just additional money in your pocket. Right now, we're focused, or we have a heavy focus on, like our marketing team, on the southern tier. As you can see, it's the southern tier is pretty much the entirety of the qualification, and then Western New York and Central New York has that like little blimp that has some availability there. But right now it is. Pretty much all of the southern tier, which we're focused on for that. So we want to make sure that you know about it, and that way that we can add it into our financial model for you as well. Now let's look again back to add in that energy community, the 10% bonus, and that now goes down to a negative $9,000 net solar cost for you. So now at that point, you have standard incentives, you have your REAP grant, and you have energy community, and now this is completely paid for. So this is one of those situations to where if this were your business and you were in this exact situation, I would say, when do we sign? Now, going solar with GreenSpark, what separates GreenSpark from maybe another manufacturer that you might want to go out and get a quote from? Our experience, I think, is first and foremost the most important piece, being that we have been in business for 20 plus years. We've seen a little bit of everything. We've installed a little bit of everything. And now, I guess something of note, just as not a case study necessarily, but we've all had or talked to one of those customers previously that has gone through the solar process, and 4 years goes by and maybe they need maintenance on that product, and they go to call their manufacturer and they're not there anymore. So what do? I don't know. You're in a tough spot at that point. You'd have to go out to another manufacturer to kind of go through an OEM, after installation process, and it would likely come out of your pocket. So when dealing with a company that is going to be around, those warranties and everything are going to be available for you because we're going to be available for you. We're still here. We're still moving. We're growing as a company. I think every time in the solar world, things have transitioned to a new approach. Being that we've been a part of Amicus, we've seen the writing on the wall. And I think we've made those steps to continually make us relevant here in New York State and beyond. We do have a customer-centric approach. I think anybody that's spoken with us, we're extremely transparent with what we're trying to accomplish for you. All the work that is done is pretty much done on our end. So your experience with GreenSpark is certainly not one where you have a lot of homework to do. We try to put our best foot forward just to, leave New York State a little bit better than how we see it. And hopefully your approach is the same as well. And then our value driven, we're a certified B Corp. When I first started with GreenSpark, I didn't really know what that meant. And through our, company meetings, our owner, Kevin, has been truly focused on letting his employees understand fully why we do what we do. And that focus is really on three things specifically, people, profit, and planet. We want to have a work environment that is great to go to, that you're excited to go to work. Prior to this, I was in the corporate industry, and I was done. And My time here at GreenSpark has been phenomenal. I love the people I work with. I love the industry that I'm in, and I'm excited to kind of move forward in this industry. We want to leave the planet better than how we see it today, and that's obviously our true focus for a solar company. And then profit. We are a business, and we do want to make money, but not at the expense of our customers. And I think that's what really truly separates us from possibly other manufacturers and even other businesses not in our industry. Um, Something we also do, we help you on the financial side with a path to purchase solar. The Poreware example, John and those guys, they purchase that system, so it's theirs to own. You are going to save the most or have the most options for savings when owning a system, but not every business is the same. Sometimes there's lease to own options where money's a little tighter initially. So the bank passes the tax benefits onto you, through lower subsidized lease payments. So that allows you to stretch out a little bit further. And then we also offer, loan options to customers. We have Tompkins Bank that we're close to here that we offer that partnership to any of our customers that might not have a personal relationship with a lender. So we want to be sure that under any circumstance that when you come to us, there's going to be an option one way or the other. And then we can determine if the option is right for you at the end of the day. If it is, great. If it's not, we hope that we were transparent enough with you and you had a good experience that certainly the next time somebody in your inner circle says, hey, I'm thinking about sustainability benefits and I want to look at solar, and you might turn to them and say, you know what, I think you should call Chris over at GreenSpark. They treated me really well. They let me kind of know what the process looked like, and I feel like I honestly could trust those guys. So we hope that that's going to be your experience with us as well. Now, if you were to contact us, what is that process going to look like? The likelihood is you're going to get to me first. And what we want to do through that first initial or preliminary process for you is a couple steps. We want to do an energy analysis. So we want to look at some bills, see what you're paying for supply and delivery, get a sense of what's going on a day-to-day basis. And I guess more importantly, kind of see what the total KWH would look like. So what are you actually consuming, month in and month out? So let's get an idea of what we need to offset. And then we could always back it down from there if we need. Then we're going to look at all the incentives you're eligible for that we've talked about. Are you eligible for REAP? Are you eligible for domestic content? Are you eligible for energy communities? What have you been looking up? Maybe there's other things that are out there here in New York State that are available to you that you might have done some research on that we can assist you along with that process as well too. Then we're going to go through the proposal process. So we take all the information that you provide us, we put that into our financial calculator, and we're able to give you basically that proposal that I showed you in multiple steps from Poreware. What's that top line number? What would your incentives and grants look like? What's your bottom line number? And then based on that bottom line number, how do we move forward? So loan applications, or how are we going to finance this project? We discuss what is the best steps to move forward for you in this particular process. Maybe the financials don't look as good for you, and we might have to explore something like a PPA or community solar, or those types of things that are, outside of the standard. And then when it's all said and done, we get our design team and everybody that's once you sign a contract or start the process to say, yes, we're going to do this, we get everybody together on our end and say, all right, here's the final design, here's the permits, here's everything that we need to do, and then we're good to go from there. All right. Questions, comments, concerns? We can stop right there and we can kind of go into any questions you guys have. I'm going to stop sharing this just so I can get over to the questions. So that way, if you guys need this, this will also be shared for you as well too. First question I saw was my understanding that the REAP grants have ended. Is this the case or are they still available? Great question. The REAP grants, based on the March 31st deadline, have paused for a moment. They are coming right back. So the likelihood that if we were to have a conversation today and move forward with a project, in the third quarter, we are back and better than ever. And that'll move back into the fourth quarter as well, too. So just based on, let's just say, the current administration and how everything, there was a quick pause and then we're back to go. Are there any similar grants for being within city limits? Not normally. Unfortunately, city limits typically get the raw end of it. That's why I think the additional focus on things like domestic content are more beneficial. So that way we can get additional tax adders for you outside of, say, energy communities or REAP or things like that. Let me just check. Let's see here. There was a previous question. What I will ask is my administrator, Maggie, there was a previous question that we had, and I forgot what that question was. Could you put that in the chat for me or throw it in the chat for myself on Slack? And I can answer that one as well, too. Okay, so the first one was, let's see here. One was the changes to REAP in 2025. We kind of discussed that a little bit. So it did move down from 50% to 25%. And then once the third quarter hits, we're back to the 50% moving forward. We'll certainly keep you guys posted on any other changes that we might hear about. But as of at least today, that's what we're looking like right now. The other question, most interested in how manufacturers can install solar without reducing their liquidity, using the equipment as collateral or an NYSERDA guarantee, somehow to allow business to make longer view investment than is typical. Actually, Thomas, I'm going to take that question offline with you. I think it'll be easier for me to answer that just because I think it's going to be a little bit more complex than just a general answer there. So I will answer that question for you. And certainly I can, make sure to send that question out to everybody else who was in attendance as well, just so you can hear the answer to that. So when I do my follow-up for this, I'll be sure to send out that Q&A for everybody as well. All right. I think this is the last of the questions. So I certainly appreciate everybody for jumping on. Hopefully my next installment in the webinar series will go just as smoothly as today's. And we hope we can see you guys back for some repeat customers. So, and if I speak to you in the near future, let's get something done. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.